All right, it's 2 p.m. Got strikers coach, Raiders coach, special teams coordinator Ricky Brown with us. Wags, go ahead. Got a bunch of spots to talk about.
Well, Coach, I guess let's start by talking about the strikers, and I'm calling up my end of season depth chart right now. But it looked like Kenneth McShane took over that position toward the end of the season. How did you feel he performed? And do you feel like, you got a good one there in Kenny?
Yeah, Kenny played his tail off towards the end of the season. Jackson Campbell was playing his tail off. I think there's some fantastic, healthy competition between those two guys, along with Justin Coles and Jay Sean McClain and Connor Lassane. There's 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 some nice depth there. I think you know they're uh, they're not competing against each other; they're competing with each other, and I really think they're trying to like improve the position and push the position about as far forward as possible. With Jackson and Kenny, I kind of look at those guys as like 1A and 1B right now. Um, Jackson had a fantastic offseason during our fourth quarter workouts and everything. And then um, both of those guys go in the game right now, and you feel really good.
What did McShane show you toward the end of the season that enabled him to take over the starting job? And what does he bring to the table? What do you kind of think are his
He's an extremely physical player. He's kind of like that old school Sam Backer. Coach Volker and I always kind of talk about Kenny in that way. He's fantastic when it comes to block destruction. I mean, you'll watch him play, and he's kind of an old school player. Um, he's definitely got a lot of the opponent's colors on on his helmet from the paint, from him destructing those blocks. He's kind of a throwback player in that sense. Now, to his credit, he does a nice job playing in space as well. But that part with him kind of being attached to the line of scrimmage, he's done a really good job there, kind of setting edges and then being able to fall back in and make a play or set an edge and make a tackle out there in space. He's done a nice job.
I'm imagine losing the starting job must have motivated Jackson. And then I'm sure you all talked after the season about what does he need to work on and improve upon. And I'm sure that he's very highly motivated to try to get back that starting job if he can.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is, and I've said it to the guys in the room. I think that's probably the deepest position, just because you have two guys that are trying to help each other become their best uh, football selves, but at the same time, I mean, there's a lot of love and care for each other. So like they're trying to make themselves better, but also make their teammates better. Really kind of pushing the overall product at that striker position um, forward and trying to make it get done better than it's ever been done at that position.
So I mean, I think Jackson's a little bit different player than Kenny. They're a little bit different body type. What do you feel like Jackson brings to the table? Is he maybe better in coverage or something? Because I know he's a former defensive back, whereas I don't. Kenny was I think he was an inside linebacker initially, wasn't he?
Yeah, yeah. No, that's you're spot on there, Wags. He Jackson, like as Kenny is um, kind of setting the edge from the line of scrimmage, kind of that old school Sam Backer. Jackson's kind of that more in 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 space guy. And as we've talked to Kenny about getting better in space and doing those things, and he's really taken it and grown. With Jackson, it's okay. Well, make sure you're good with your striking, especially from the line of scrimmage. And he's kind of been, we Coach Volker, Coach Hall, um, you know, Coach Volker loves to have our guys play with great fundamentals, And Coach Hall gave a great presentation about a week or so ago just on block destruction. And, you're seeing guys really harp on that, especially in the spring.
Let's go over to the Raider spot. Luke Pierce is the guy that really emerged 2 years ago, and it seems like the sky's the limit for him. Just gets better and better, and he's he's a longer body type than he maybe have had at the Raider spot. Can you talk about Luke and his progress?
Yeah, Luke. Luke missed last spring, and then what you saw from Luke this past off season, kind of January through March, if you will, was him just hitting the weight room hard, really trying to improve his play strength, trying to improve his weight, because he's got some good length to him and he brings some pass rush to him. And then you just want to, because I think he's a really good player. And when you give guys things that they can kind of chew on, like how we talked, things that Kenny needed to improve on, Jackson needed to improve on. The biggest thing with Luke is just getting some of that mass and some of that weight to give himself a better anchor as he plays against some of these tackles in our league.
So, I mean, did you feel like Luke had a productive campaign last year, or did you feel, he needed to have more sacks, more pressures, that kind of thing? I was trying to look up his stats here real quick.
Yeah, sacks are fantastic. Love that stuff. But Luke is kind of, when he kind of started being an every down player for us his sophomore year, there were times after the game I'm like, I think he's in the 190 pounds right now. So he's kind of just taken that challenge to continue to gain weight, and he has the frame to do it. So you want each year, you're putting about 10 to 15 pounds of really good weight, not losing any speed or athleticism. So he's kind of following that process of continuing to get bigger, faster, stronger in the weight room, and kind of gaining that really good weight.
Yeah, I was looking. His numbers were down a little bit in terms of tackles for loss and sacks. He had 4.5 sacks and 10 tackles for loss as a sophomore, but he had 2.5 sacks and 6 tackles for loss last year. But I guess you're saying the numbers don't always tell the story, is what you're saying?
Yeah, it's there. There are some times where, the scheme dictates, like he had a pass rush in 2024 season against South Florida, going up against a really good player, and I mean, he threw an outside move and he looked like a dude. I mean, like it was a big time American Athletic Conference play, and when those opportunities present themselves to get after the passer, you got to earn the right to rush the passer. But I feel like he can have another year of development there and really start to win those one-on-one matchups.
And talk about Dylan Spilios and how he's coming along. Is he challenging Luke? Or, I mean, do you feel like Dylan's getting to the point where he's a guy that, has to get on the field?
Yeah, you don't ever worry about Dylan. Similar to Kenny and Jackson, my message to some of those young guys is, you got 4 dudes that sit in the front of the room that have played a lot of meaningful snaps, and they need to be a wet sponge in front of those guys, asking them questions, what it is they see, why did they play this play a certain way, because all of those guys, trust is a hard thing to get and an easy thing to lose, and each one of those guys has really done a nice job of establishing trust, both from me, but also from their teammates.
Dylan missed the last 4 games of last season with an injury. Is he participating in spring?
Yeah, so So he had a shoulder injury and then he had a back. So he's been a little limited, but I think he'll be okay.
And what does Dylan bring to the table? What are some of the attributes you like about him?
He's like a little bit of a lower and thicker Raider. Um, he's a big time kind of block destruction type guy. I mean, he's a really violent guy.
And who else you
And
got in the mix over there at Raider in addition to Pierce and Spelios?
yeah, so we moved Adam Clank from inside linebacker to outside linebacker. So he's been showing up there, and I think he's a really good athlete. Had dealt with some injuries early on in his career, but he's, similar to Kenny McShann, kind of put those injuries behind him in the rearview mirror, and there's not a lot of tape out there on him, but he's showing up in practice. He's doing a good job competing. Um, Davion Jones, he's a young guy that's coming along. You got Gavin Woods coming along. There's a lot of good depth there, and guys are pushing each other. They're competing with each other, but they're I feel really good that it's a pretty tight knit room.
In regard to special teams, who's looking good as a punter? You got to replace Riley, a really good punter. I don't know, Jacob Carlson, who's been
Yeah,
kind of leading the pack there.
yeah. So Jacob Carlson and Stephen Glenn are both hitting probably the best balls of their careers. So that part's been nice. Um, it's been a good deal for those guys to get some of the reps with the ones, just because for so long Riley Reithman was the punter here, and Riley's done a great job. He it was good to see Riley at the pro day. He did a really nice job at pro day, but obviously in college, everybody exhausts their eligibility, and you got to go to the next man up. I think Jacob and Steven are doing a great job.
I think at the end of last season, Ray Lane was returning punts. Do you anticipate putting Riley back there, or I mean Eli rather, or do you not? I feel like Eli's too valuable on offense to have exposed as a punt returner, and if so, who are working at punt returner?
You know, it's always interesting. I feel like sometimes the harder collisions happen on kickoff return than they do on punt. Sometimes you'll see the guys catch it on punt and then they get tackled right away, but they're more of like it's like tackling a kind of like a tackling dummy. Whereas some of those kickoff return reps, you got one guy running 20 miles an hour this way, you got another guy running 20 miles an hour that way. So those are the big collisions. But Eli's done a nice job tracking the ball. That part, Andre Gilbert, Isaiah Bryant, Charles Robb, like a bunch of guys have done a really nice job with that. We'll kind of see how that I guess materializes. But David Cole, our snipe coach, he's been a complete asset in terms of coaching those guys up at the punt return position.
And what do you do?
I told Eli that we haven't returned a punt for a touchdown since 2009. So he definitely put that on his list of things to do this year.
We'd love to check that box.
I was going to ask you, what do you do with long snapper when Rain's playing baseball?
Yeah, Rain. I mean, he's an absolute stud. Really happy that he's able to play two sports and have those experiences. But Andrew McLaughlin and Jackson Cood have been kind of splitting the reps there, and whether that's on punting or whether that's in the field goal and PAT kicking game. So it's always good to have those guys training and doing those things. If a shoestring bursts, it's a total next man up situation.
Yeah, Riley told me that he had one of the freshmen serving as his long snapper for his pro day. Do you know which one of the two it was?
It was Jackson Cood.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. I think I've asked about all I can ask. Strauss, you have anything?
I do not. You covered it all.
All right, Coach.
Thanks,
Thanks
Ricky.
so much. See you guys.
We'll have
Have a
Luke
good one.
Pierce. We'll have Luke Pierce on at 3:00.
There we go.
Thank you.
See ya.